My wife laughed. Relax. You're the doctor. You'll always pay. After demanding another $40K renovation, I said, okay. Scheduled 1. Quiet morning off, packed only what was mine, secured a new apartment, and let her keep spending. Minutes later, someone's about to call her for. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to tell my wife I want a divorce. I should be nervous, but honestly, I've never been more excited about anything in my adult life. Let me give you the background. I'm Jet, 45, emergency medicine physician here in Austin. I make good money, not yacht money, but enough to live very comfortably. 10 years ago, I married Sage against my better judgment. My family pushed hard for it because she seemed appropriate and I was getting older. Looking back, every instinct I had told me not to do it, but I ignored them all. The change happened literally the week after our honeymoon. Suddenly, our modest house wasn't good enough. My reliable Honda wasn't good enough. My casual clothes weren't good enough. Everything needed to be upgraded to match what she called our new lifestyle. Over the past decade, my marriage has become a financial nightmare. She leases a new Mercedes every 2 years and currently drives an $85K GLS that she needed for grocery runs. Our house has been renovated 3 times. 3 times. We gut the kitchen. She decides she doesn't like it 2 years later. We gut it again. Her closet looks like a Nordstrom showroom with $300 shoes she wears once and designer handbags she rotates through like a rental service. She spends her days shopping, planning the next home improvement project, or researching luxury vacations we can't actually afford. When I try to discuss our finances, she cries and says I'm unsupportive of her happiness. We haven't been intimate in over 2 years. We barely even talk unless it's about money she wants to spend. Despite making a physician's salary, we have essentially no savings because every dollar goes to fund her lifestyle. The final straw came 6 months ago when she announced she wanted to tear out our perfectly functional master bathroom to install a spa-like retreat that would cost $40K. When I said no, she accused me of not caring about her well-being and stopped speaking to me for a week. That's when I realized I'm not her husband. I'm her personal ATM that occasionally makes conversation. So I've been planning my escape methodically, like a medical procedure. I secured my own apartment, a decent 1-bedroom in a less desirable part of town. It's clean, safe, and costs 60% less than our current housing expenses. Lease signed, keys in my pocket. I consulted divorce attorney Knox Sterling, and turns out the prenup I insisted on is solid. Texas is a community property state, but since she's never worked and all assets are in my name from before the marriage, she gets nothing in alimony. She'll have to actually support herself for the first time in her adult life. Tomorrow I'm returning her leased Mercedes and replacing it with a used Prius I already bought. I'm canceling the credit cards she uses for shopping sprees. The house goes on the market immediately. I've spent 10 years watching her cry on command whenever I question spending. I know she'll threaten suicide, call my mother, promise to change, the whole playbook. But here's the thing. I don't care anymore. I'm completely emotionally detached from her drama. My colleague Dax thinks I'm crazy to give up the doctor lifestyle, but he doesn't understand what it's like to work 12-hour shifts in the ER just to come home to someone who sees you as a paycheck with a medical degree. The weirdest part is, I'm not sad about this at all. I feel like I'm finally waking up from a decade-long nightmare. I've been so focused on providing the lifestyle she demanded that I forgot I used to have interests, hobbies, preferences that weren't about funding someone else's fantasies. There's this coffee shop near the hospital where I've been stopping for the past year. The owner, Ren, is this genuine person who actually asks about my day and remembers what I tell her. We have real conversations about books, travel, ideas, things that have nothing to do with granite countertops or luxury SUVs. She's what reminded me that human connection doesn't have to revolve around money. Tomorrow, I'm going to deliver the news clinically and calmly. I've practiced it like presenting a diagnosis to a patient's family. This marriage is not working. I've filed for divorce. I'm moving out today. The house will be sold. You need to make arrangements for your own housing and income. I expect her to follow the standard manipulation protocol. Tears, hysteria, accusations that I'm abandoning her, promises to change, threats to turn my family against me. But I've already talked to my mother and explained the financial situation. Even she agrees that no one should have to fund another adult's shopping addiction while sacrificing their own happiness. Reddit, I know this sounds cold, but I've never felt more free in my life. I'm 45 years old, and I'm finally going to find out who I am when I'm not just someone's financial resource. Wish me luck. After tomorrow, I get my life back. Update 1. Well, Reddit, I did it. Yesterday morning, I delivered the divorce news, and it went exactly as expected. Except for one thing, I felt absolutely nothing during her emotional meltdown. I had prepared what to say like I was presenting a medical case. I waited until she finished her coffee because she needs caffeine before any serious conversation. And then I sat down across from her at our granite kitchen island that she insisted we needed 3 years ago. Sage, I've made a decision about our marriage. I'm filing for divorce. I've already retained an attorney, found an apartment, and started the process of separating our finances. The look on her face was pure shock, like I had just told her she had 6 months to live. For about 10 seconds, she just stared at me. Then the performance began. First came the tears. Not the kind of tears that come from genuine sadness, but the kind she's deployed for a decade whenever I questioned her spending. Immediate waterworks, gasping, the whole production. How can you do this to me, after everything I've done for this marriage? I almost laughed at that line. What exactly has she done for this marriage besides spend my money? Then came the accusations. You never supported my happiness. You made me feel like a prisoner in my own home. You work all the time and ignore my needs. I responded with the same clinical detachment I use with difficult patients. What specific needs are you referring to? Because from my perspective, I've funded every single thing you've asked for over 10 years. That's when she shifted tactics to the begging phase. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. I'll change, I promise. I know I've been spending too much, but I can stop. This was rich, considering she'd refused couples therapy every time I suggested it over the years. Suddenly, when her funding source is threatened, therapy becomes a viable option. But here's the thing that surprised me most, Reddit. I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, no regret. Just the same professional detachment I have when telling someone their test results. I realized that whatever emotional connection I once had to this woman had been completely severed by years of being treated like a financial resource instead of a person. When she saw that tears and promises weren't working, she escalated to threats. I'll tell your mother what you're doing. I'll tell everyone at the hospital. People will know what kind of man you really are. I actually smiled at that point. Please do. Tell them I'm the kind of man who refuses to fund another adult's shopping addiction while sacrificing my own financial security and emotional well-being. I'm sure they'll be horrified. That's when she realized I was serious. The crying stopped, and she just stared at me with this look of complete confusion, like she genuinely couldn't understand why her usual manipulation tactics weren't working. But where will I live? How will I pay for things? I don't have a job. Those are problems you'll need to solve. You're 44 years old. Most adults figure out how to support themselves. I stood up to leave and she grabbed my arm. Please don't do this. I love you. I looked down at her hand on my arm and said, no, you don't. You love what I provide. There's a difference. And then I walked out. Just like that. 10 years of marriage ended with me walking out the front door while she was still sitting at that expensive kitchen island. She's been calling and texting non-stop since then. The messages cycle through all 5 stages of grief in rapid succession. Please come home so we can talk about this. When she's in denial. You're a selfish bastard who's ruining both our lives. When she's angry. I'll do anything you want. Just give me another chance. When she's bargaining. I can't live without you. I don't know how to be alone. When she's depressed. And, fine. I hope you're happy when you realize you made a huge mistake. When she reaches some version of acceptance. I'm staying at my new apartment, which is a furnished 1-bedroom in East Austin. You know what? It's perfect. I can afford it easily. I don't need anyone else's approval for how it's decorated, and I ate leftover Thai food standing at the kitchen counter last night while reading a book I've been wanting to read for 2 years. No granite countertops, no designer anything, no stress about whether the throw pillows match the curtains. Just quiet, simple, mine. My mother called because apparently Sage reached out to her crying. Mom was initially sympathetic to Sage until I explained the financial situation, the constant renovations, the luxury cars, the complete lack of savings despite my income. Mom's response was, well, no wonder you're exhausted. I thought you two were just living well. not that you were funding her entire existence. Even my mother gets it now. Tomorrow the Mercedes gets returned to the dealership, and Sage gets the keys to the used Prius I bought her. The credit cards are already canceled. The house goes on the market next week. My colleague Dax asked if I'm having second thoughts. The answer is absolutely not. I feel like I've been holding my breath for 10 years and finally remembered how to breathe. Update 2. It's been a week since I moved out, and the difference in my mental state is remarkable. I know this sounds dramatic, but I feel like I've been released from prison. Let me paint you a picture of my new life versus my old one. My old morning routine involved waking up in a showroom-perfect master bedroom that cost $30K to design properly. Sage would already be planning her day around shopping trips or researching expensive home improvements. Breakfast conversation consisted entirely of her explaining why we needed to replace something that was perfectly functional. I'd leave for work stressed about money and dreading coming home. My new morning routine is completely different. I wake up in a simple bedroom with functional furniture. I make my own coffee in a regular coffee maker, not the $2,000 espresso machine Sage insisted we needed. I read news in complete silence. I leave for work actually looking forward to my evening. The apartment itself is nothing fancy. One bedroom, small kitchen, basic furniture, but it's clean, safe, and costs less in total monthly expenses than what Sage used to spend on clothes alone. I never realized how much stress I was carrying about money until that weight was lifted. Sage has been served with divorce papers, and the reality of her situation is apparently setting in. The manipulation attempts have intensified now that she realizes the prenup means she gets no alimony and will have to support herself for the first time in her adult life. Her latest strategy is recruiting family members to pressure me. My aunt called this week saying I was abandoning my responsibilities as a husband. I explained that funding another adult's luxury lifestyle indefinitely was not actually a marital responsibility. Aunt went quiet when I mentioned the numbers, how much Sage spent monthly versus how much we saved. But the most important conversation was with my mother, who came to visit my new place this week. She took one look around and said, "This feels like you, Jet. That house never did." We had a long conversation about the marriage. I showed her our financial records from the past decade, the constant renovations, the luxury car leases, the credit card bills. Mom was shocked. She said she thought we were just living well on my physician's salary. Not that every penny was going to fund Sage's shopping addiction. "I couldn't understand why you always seem so tired and stressed," Mom said. "Now I get it. You were working constantly just to pay for someone else's fantasies." Having my family's understanding has been huge. The physician community can be judgmental about divorce, especially when you're successful. But once people understand the financial dynamics, they get it. My colleague Dax stopped by with beer last weekend. He looked around the apartment and said, "This is the most relaxed I've seen you in years." We talked about how the medical profession can trap you in lifestyle inflation. You make more money, so people expect you to live a certain way, even when that lifestyle makes you miserable. The funniest part is that Sage still doesn't understand why I'm happy. She called yesterday crying, saying I'd destroyed our beautiful life together. I wanted to ask what exactly was beautiful about a marriage where one person worked constantly while the other person spent money and complained that it wasn't enough. She's staying in the house until it sells because my attorney says that's fair since I moved out voluntarily, but she's panicking about what comes next. Her latest offer was to compromise and reduce her spending by 20% if I came back. 20% of ridiculous is still ridiculous. I haven't felt this optimistic about my life in a decade. I'm actually considering making a career change to something less lucrative but more fulfilling. Emergency medicine pays well, but it's brutal, and I only stuck with it because I needed the money to fund our lifestyle. Now that I only need to support myself, I have options. Speaking of which, I've been spending more time at that coffee shop near the hospital. Ren asked why I seemed so much happier lately, and I ended up telling her about the divorce. She was supportive but not surprised. Apparently I looked worn down before, and she's noticed the change. We've started having longer conversations about books, travel, ideas. It's refreshing to talk to someone who's interested in my thoughts rather than my bank account. She mentioned she's always wanted to try this new hiking trail outside the city, and I realized I haven't done anything purely for enjoyment in years. I'm not rushing into anything romantic. I need to finish this divorce and figure out who I am as a single person first. But it's nice to remember what genuine human connection feels like. The house should sell within the month because Austin market is strong, and then this chapter of my life will be completely closed. I'm looking forward to dating again eventually, but this time I'll know the difference between someone who wants to be with me versus someone who wants access to my income. For now, I'm just enjoying the simple pleasure of making decisions based on what I actually want instead of what someone else demands. Final update. The divorce was finalized last week. Thanks to the solid prenup and Knox Sterling's excellent work, it was straightforward. Sage gets nothing in alimony. We split the house sale proceeds because that was fair since we both live there, and I keep my retirement accounts and investments. She's been forced to find an apartment and, miracle of miracles, an actual job. Apparently facing the reality of supporting herself motivated her in ways that 10 years of my suggestions never did. She's working at a boutique clothing store, which is ironic considering how much money she spent in places like that using my credit cards. Her final manipulation attempt was showing up at the hospital last month making a scene, crying loudly in the lobby about how I was ruining her life. Security had to escort her out, and honestly, it just reinforced how right this decision was. My colleagues were supportive because turns out several of them suspected our marriage wasn't as perfect as it looked from the outside. The house sold in 2 weeks for asking price. Walking away from that place after the final signing felt like leaving a movie set where I'd been forced to play a character I didn't recognize for a decade. All those expensive renovations Sage insisted on didn't add any real value to our lives, just stress and debt. I've been living in my simple apartment for over a month now, and the relief continues to be remarkable. My monthly expenses are about 40% of what they used to be, which means I've been able to start saving real money for the first time in years. I'm even considering that career change I mentioned, maybe urgent care instead of emergency medicine, better hours and less stress even if it's less money. The best part, though, has been rediscovering what I actually enjoy when I'm not just working to fund someone else's lifestyle. I've been reading again, something I gave up because Sage complained that me reading meant I was ignoring her. I've been hiking, going to movies I want to see, even took a weekend trip to San Antonio just because I felt like it. And then there's Ren. I mentioned the coffee shop owner in my previous posts. We'd become friends over the past year, having genuine conversations that reminded me what human connection could feel like. After the divorce was final, she asked if I wanted to try that hiking trail she'd mentioned months ago. We went last Saturday, and it was the first time in years I spent an entire day with someone who wanted nothing from me except my company. We talked about everything: books, travel dreams, funny stories from her coffee shop, interesting cases from the hospital. No mention of money, no complaints about what I wasn't providing, just two people enjoying each other's company. At the end of the hike, she said something that really hit me. I've been hoping for months that you'd realize how much happier you seem when you're just being yourself instead of trying to make someone else happy. Turns out she'd been interested in me for a while but respected my marriage. She said it was obvious I was miserable, and she hoped I'd eventually find the courage to change my situation. We're taking things slowly. I need to fully process the end of my marriage and figure out who I am as a single person before getting seriously involved with anyone. But it's incredible to spend time with someone who appreciates my thoughts, my sense of humor, my company, instead of just my earning potential. She runs her coffee shop because she loves it, not because she's trying to fund some expensive lifestyle. She drives a 10-year-old Honda because it's reliable, not because she needs to impress anyone. She reads books, volunteers at the animal shelter, has real hobbies and interests. She's what a genuine partner looks like. Yesterday I ran into Sage at the grocery store. She was dressed normally with no designer clothes, looked stressed, and was actually checking prices on items before putting them in her cart. She saw me and started to approach, probably for another manipulation attempt, but then noticed I was genuinely smiling for the first time in years. "You look happy," she said, and there was something like confusion in her voice. "I am," I told her. "I hope you find a way to be happy too, but not at someone else's expense." She didn't have a response to that. Reddit, I learned something important through this process. Financial success means absolutely nothing if you're emotionally bankrupt. I spent 10 years funding someone else's dreams while forgetting I had any of my own. I let myself become an ATM with emotions instead of a human being with needs and wants. The scariest part was realizing how completely I'd lost myself. I couldn't even remember what I enjoyed anymore because every decision had been filtered through, "Can we afford this?" and "Will Sage approve?" Now I make decisions based on what I actually want. Want to read instead of watching TV? I read. Want to spend Saturday hiking instead of shopping? I hike. Want to eat Thai food 3 nights this week? I eat Thai food 3 nights this week. It sounds simple, but when you've spent a decade suppressing your own preferences to avoid conflict with someone who sees you as a funding source, rediscovering personal autonomy is revolutionary. The doctor lifestyle isn't worth it if the doctor is miserable. No lifestyle is worth sacrificing your emotional well-being and personal agency. Thanks to everyone who supported me through this process. Sometimes the best investment you can make is divesting from people who see you as an ATM instead of a human being.